that sort of thing. But I'm a functional medicine practitioner, which means that we very much treat the body as a whole. We look for the root cause of any kind of health issues that people have. So I'm really evidence-based. So there will be a bit of science in today's talk.
Love a bit of science.
Because I think it's really important, because I find it often really helps people to remember and helps to motivate them, because then they realise why they're doing it. So that kind of helps. But basically my day-to-day job, I work with everything from digestive issues like IBS, IBD, that kind of stuff, all the way to the hormone end, PCOS, endometriosis, menopause, PMS, all of that stuff. So yeah, there's lots you can do. But tonight we're going to talk about breaking a late night snacking habit, because I don't know about you guys, but I have obviously do plans for my clients for their specific health needs. You guys do food plans for your clients, and many of them say they do really well all through the day. Like they do their breakfast, their lunch, their dinner, whatever, perfectly, and then it just all falls apart at night. This seems to be a really common issue.
Yeah, I know there will be some people watching this that will be going, yes, that is me, 100%. And I'm going to keep an eye on the comments as well, see if you've got any comments coming by.
So it's so funny, because people can be very motivated, and then they find themselves that sort of self-sabotage in the evening, find that they're suddenly, eating a whole packet of chocolate buttons or, whatever else, when they've just done so well the rest of the time. So really, why do we want to snack in the evening? Well, firstly, you can all sort of feel less guilty, because sometimes obviously it's because evening hours are less busy and less structured, and sometimes we create patterns or habits that are formed. So for example, like you might start eating snacks while you're cooking, or you might always have that sweet treat after dinner and you find that difficult to break. But you'll be pleased to know that it's not all down to that, because there's some new research that's recently come out that shows that our bodies are physiologically programmed to crave sweet things after dark.
Oh,
okay,
really?
So you're actually having to break your own physiology, your own biochemistry, in order to stop it happening. So research from Harvard Medical School, who we love, showed us that our internal clock, our kind of circadian system, you may have heard about the circadian, the daily rhythm. This basically prompts us to reach for really sweet, starchy foods and salty foods in the evening around 8 o'clock. Yeah, so this is your body. Yeah, so a study concluded that this little internal clock that we have causes us to have an evening peak in appetite that promotes us to eat kind of larger, high calorie meals at that time, just before we then have that fasting period overnight for sleep. Now, so this was built in needs basically from our ancestors when they needed to store fat to survive when food was scarce. But today, obviously, we don't know, food isn't scarce. So it's kind of taking its toll on our waistlines a bit. But basically what they said was that tendency to want to, if you're just like leave yourself to your own devices, you're not consciously think about it. Lots of people tend to skip breakfast and then have a larger meal in the evening. But that food pattern of food intake across the day is basically what sumo wrestlers do to gain weight.
Oh, right.
So it seems that the internal circadian rhythm is basically trying to get you to have this really efficient food storage system, which of course was probably like really valuable through evolution, but nowadays is not helpful at all. So it's particularly if it's prompting you to start eating snacks around 9 o'clock. Does that make sense?
It does. They do say, don't they, that we haven't really evolved that much compared to, well, since sort of paleo times, do they? We haven't actually evolved that much. It's only about a percentage or something like that, less than a percentage, something like that.
But if you think about how much our world has changed and the availability of food, particularly those really kind of highly palatable foods that we get, those sort of ultra processed foods, it's really hard to kind of want to resist those. So if your biochemical urge is trying to get you to have it at the same time as all that fantastic marketing, then you can see how tough it is. Always
by the counter, isn't it? Always as you get to the counter, something's there that makes you want to go, oh, I'll have that for later. You had no intention of buying it, but as soon as you sit at the counter, that's it. You've reached.
Billions of pounds of research have gone in to make you do that, Sarah. Those food companies are so clever. They use all sorts of kind of neuro-linguistic programming and other bits and pieces to make it happen. It's very frustrating. But that's like one of the science reasons why we tend to do the stacking. And the other is blood sugar balance. Now, this is probably something that you guys cover, but just to kind of kind of explain it again for people who maybe don't know what it is.
Yeah,
so let me ask you, do any of you often feel grumpy or hangry if you miss a meal, or do you have that 3 p.m. energy crash which gets you reaching for sugary snacks?
Yeah, well, I have to confess that myself and Gary used to have an emergency snack pot, because if we got hungry, we got really, really grouchy, and it used to be more him than me. But me now, if I don't eat, I'm evil. I'm food.
So that could be, I mean, obviously you guys are training a lot, so that could explain it, but it could also, you know, what that's often that blood sugar imbalance is what gets us reaching for the kind of biscuits around 9 o'clock. And it can also be what might wake some people up at kind of 2 or 3 in the morning. So if you're someone who just is bolt upright at that time, that can often be your blood sugar dipping after eating a meal. So basically, things like refined carbohydrates and sugars, particularly if you're eating them in the evening, they're really rapidly digested. And so what happens is they make our blood sugar, our glucose levels go up really high and well above the normal range. Now, really having really high blood glucose levels is actually quite toxic to our cells. So in order to protect it, we want to tidy that glucose away as quickly as possible. So we release insulin from our pancreas. So that does a great job. It basically lets the glucose into cells for energy or stores it as fat. However, if you have really rapid blood sugar spike, then what happens is you then have a rapid insulin spike, and it can often overshoot the amount you've got. So you then end up going into very low blood sugar, which of course is really, it kind of starves the brain of fuel, which makes us irritated and anxious and angry. And it also means that we then get that, our body thinks we were into famine because it doesn't know why that blood sugar drops happened. Yeah. So it gets us reaching for anything as quickly as possible. And then that obviously our reasoning goes out the window at that point. So if we start craving sugars again, and sugar is starchy substance, and our blood sugar goes up again, and so you end up on this roller coaster of extreme highs and lows. Yeah, and it's not just damaging to us in terms of impacting on our diet. It can have real health issues too, kind of itching us closer to kind of type 2 diabetes or whatever. So, but often that's what's going to make you want to grab that snack.
Yeah, and I think most people would have. I mean, I've certainly had it before, where you have left it too long, where you've eaten and you do have that crash, and you can feel it, and you feel a bit sick, you feel a bit dizzy, you get like the shakes, and you need something quick to lift you back up again. And it is the sweet sugary stuff you reach for, isn't it? Because it's easily digestible stuff. It will give you that lift quickly to stop you feeling unwell. But then, like you say, I suppose that then bumps you right up, and then you come crashing back down again, I suppose.
Absolutely. So that can be, as you say, your reason goes out the window because you just need that instant energy, don't you? So basically, the way, I mean, I've got some steps I can tell you to basically how you can fight this biochemical urge and your kind of primeval programming, which is conspiring against your lovely program that you're doing. But we have so many members that say that they do so well with all of their food during the day. They plan really well, and it is literally, it's that evening when they sit down after they've had a long day at work, they've done their training, and they just want to eat sweet food. And I mean, I'm not going to say any names because people obviously tell me stuff in confidence, but they'll say that I can eat like a whole packet of biscuits. I can literally just sit there, a whole packet of biscuits, and without even realizing. And then all of a sudden they're like, well, what did I do that for? I've worked so hard all day and all week, and now I've eaten a whole packet of biscuits. So any tips you've got, I am sure we'll be very grateful for. Well, you'll be delighted. I've got 6 kind of big tips. 6, So the very first one is I'd like you to connect the dots, like basically work out why you're eating, because people often eat out of boredom or because of stress, or they're irritated by something, or sometimes just out of habit rather than really from true hunger. So for many people, eating in general can be quite mindless. Like you'll often find that you've eaten something without even realizing it. And when you start to think about food as fuel for activity, which is obviously what you guys do, it can really bring to the fore the importance of the quality and the balance of the food that you're eating. If you think that you're trying to nourish your body, then it's really important that you start thinking about that, and that helps. So having that more mindful approach to food. So eating the bulk of your food in the evening when your activity is quite low can end up with us getting more fuel in our body than we need, and that surplus obviously gets sent to our fat cells. So, and also possibly more importantly, your body also does the majority of its maintenance, healing and repair work overnight while you sleep. So the quality of the food that you eat close to bedtime is really key. So processed and refined foods are not going to provide the building blocks that we need to make ourselves like feel good, maintain a healthy immune system, build muscle and keep our skin looking great. So to change this habit, what I usually recommend to clients is to try and identify the cause of the problem. Is it a habit? Is it boredom? Are you feeling emotionally a bit low? You know, which has probably been happening a lot over the last year.
Particularly over lockdown,
Yeah, absolutely. Or do you just really need a large glass of water? Because some people miss that thirst and hunger reflex get muddled up. So I always try and say to clients, consider asking yourself the following questions before opening that bag of chocolate buttons or biscuits or whatever. Am I thirsty? Am I bored? Am I tired? Am I sad? Am I irritated by something or someone? Am I hungry? So if you are still hungry after ruling out all of those other factors, it's okay to have a snack at that point. You know, go and eat. We're not telling you to starve here. But trying to work out if you're actually hungry. So I've got this great tip. So I often recommend clients to use the celery and tuna fish test. So basically, are you hungry? If you are hungry enough that a tin of tuna or a piece of celery appeals, then go and have something to eat, because you have to eat when you're hungry. If they don't appeal, then it's probably your little brain wanting a nice little dopamine hit, you know, something to go, nice little rewards there. Yeah. So maybe find something else that can give you that same feeling. You know?
And you know, as you just said that, I was just thinking I'm a little bit hungry, and then as soon as I don't know if you saw, but as soon as you said tuna and celery, I don't like either of them. I went. So I wouldn't. So I had some water.
Or you could have a boiled egg if you're like something that you'd actually like to eat. Think, but would I want a boiled egg at the moment? No, perhaps I wouldn't. Yeah. So then if you are wanting to eat at that time of the evening, obviously opt for something with good quality protein and fibre. Eat, you know, to have a small portion without distractions. I think a lot of the time that sort of proper mindful eating enables your body to digest it properly, absorb the nutrients and make you feel like you've eaten. So that's my first tip.
Good one. It's a good one.
And the next one that I often find with clients is to break any associations or triggers. Identify your triggers. So if your nightly routine involves eating more than you'd like, have a look and see if you can break that pattern. So for example, if you're someone who, after you've done the washing up, you go and sit down and your partner comes and brings some bar of chocolate, then break that pattern, identify it, move that chocolate, don't buy that chocolate, or, you know, make yourself a cup of tea or, you know, herbal tea or something instead. So just trying to do something different, mix up that evening activity can help. Even sitting in a different chair. Sometimes if you just move where you sit in the living room, that can be really helpful.
Yeah.
So for example, it's exactly that. You just find that habit, that trigger makes you do it. So for example, I had one client who always found that when she was like, she would always start snacking when she was going through her post and all of that kind of stuff. So then we moved her doing her post to another area. And then that stopped her being able, she wasn't doing it in the kitchen, she'd do it in the hallway instead, you know, whatever. And it just meant that she was away from the fridge. And then I had another client who, when working from home, was working in the kitchen. And he said that every time he'd suddenly find himself in the fridge, and it was usually when his mind was mulling over like a difficult work problem, I said to him, you've got to stop working in the kitchen. Yeah. You've got to go and work somewhere else. So yeah.
And that I can totally empathise with that one. I agree with that one, because when we built an office for myself, and I found the exact same thing, that when I was in the living room, if something was a bit like affecting me, I would get up, have a little mooch, and you'd end up in the fridge for some reason, or in the cupboards, like look in the cupboards for something. Whereas now I'm outside in the office, I don't. I just it's out of my. I've moved, so it makes perfect sense.
That is exactly it, Sarah. It's crazy, isn't it? So I find in the evening, sometimes people find grabbing snacks during the ad break, So to try and do something else during that time, or, you know, kind of do that. So breaking that conscious connection between certain activities and eating, like basically can trick your brain into the notion that it doesn't feel right to follow through that. So setting up those new habits can sometimes feel quite awkward at first and a bit like this, you know, why am I doing this? But over time, they will become established in the same way.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I think that some of these things, what people perhaps need to realise is they're not going to necessarily be easy to do. There is not an easy click your fingers and it's going to be done. It's going to take some effort and willing on your part, isn't it? If you want to change them, and it will happen over a period of time. You're not going to be perfect straight away. So.
No, absolutely. So you've got to be kind to yourself always. That's very important. But one thing that seems to be quite popular is I sometimes suggest using a meal ender to curb your appetite. So some people use mint flavoured gum, like a sugar-free gum, or some people go and brush their teeth, because you don't feel, after you've got that nice minty flavour in your mouth, lots of people don't feel like they then want to eat something. So yeah, I do recommend to clients, particularly looking for weight loss, you know, who are worrying about it, then you can, with specific health conditions, then you can go and brush your teeth after dinner, and that gives you that minty feeling that maybe stops you going to eat, and then you get clean teeth at the same time.
Do you think that's that kind of association where when you were always younger, or hopefully everyone's doing it now, before you go to bed, you brush your teeth? So it's kind of like the last thing you do. You brush your teeth and you're ready for bed. That's it. You're not going to eat anymore because you've brushed your teeth. So I wonder if, like we were saying about habits and triggers, whether subconsciously when you do that, makes you think, well, I can't eat anything else. I'll just brush my teeth.
I think you're absolutely right, and it would taste weird as well, particularly, you know, everything like that would be, and it's really helpful if also, obviously we're not covering this evening, but if you find that you may be having a glass of wine in the evening, you don't want to, brushing your teeth again, because it just, the taste of, there we go. So if you're trying not to drink in the evenings, you know, whatever, then that's quite a good one to try as well.
Yeah, that's a good tip.
So it's a good, it works. So tip number 3 to prevent your late night snacking: pre-plan your meals. Now, I'm sure this is something that you guys encourage as well, because often if you're really worn out, you've had a long day at work, choosing what to make for dinner can sometimes feel a real burden, or at the very least a bit of a chore, can't it? It's quite a difficult thing. And so if you don't have those healthy options in place already, it could be easy to just kind of really eat something not particularly substantial, then you're still hungry, then you're snacking and you're reaching for those comfort foods. But if you've got those healthy options in place to begin with, then you're much less likely to do that. If you're having a big healthy meal that's filling, but made up of the right foods, then that's not going to happen. So I often suggest you don't have to be like particularly creative. Just sometimes if you've got time at the weekend, do some batch cooking. So you've always got stuff in the freezer that fits with the plan that you're working on, or keep the ingredients for like a really quick meal to hand, like a stir fry, or sometimes like those one tin tray bakes, you put veggies in, like veggies in and some fish or whatever, but something that you can whip up really quickly so that you're going to eat well. And sometimes having that meal plan in place as well can really reduce any anxiety that people have about how much they're eating and what to eat, which sometimes leads people into a panic to that late night snacking. And also it means that if you spread your food throughout the day, that can keep your hunger at bay, so that you know that you're eating the right foods and the right amount, because any kind of erratic eating pattern, or if you're not eating enough, or you're not having enough nutrients in the food that you're eating, can give you that hunger feeling later on.
Yeah.
So I find that eating at planned intervals throughout the day can really help in terms of stopping any of that sort of emotional eating, and also can keep your blood sugar balanced. Because if you're not feeling massively ravenous or irritable or having that perceived lack of food, then you're able to make kind of more sensible decisions.
Isn't it? And it takes the stress out of it as well, because I'm sure we've all been there where you're coming home from work, you're like, oh God, I haven't got any dinner. Like, what was that? And then you're going round to the shop to pick something up for dinner, and it's like, right, what can I grab? What can I cook? I've got half an hour. What can I put in? Whereas if you, like say, if you've done that little bit prep beforehand and it's in the fridge, it might still have to cook it, but it's there. The stress is gone. You know what you're having, you know what you plan to have, and it just makes that life that little bit easier, doesn't it?
It does. And always make sure you, as you say, you've got some in the freezer, so that if the very least you just have to microwave it, you know you're doing it's a healthy meal that you've got there ready to go. So so really, blood sugar balance again is about having 3 healthy meals a day, you know, not having those snacks, and making sure that you have good quality protein and healthy fats in each meal. Because what's quite interesting is when we digest our food, and it kind of leaves the stomach, goes into the small intestine, there you get these little hormones that say, yay, I've had protein, yay, I've had healthy fats. You don't have any of that signaling for carbohydrates. And that is because, again, back to our old caveman self, in those days when we were kind of hunter-gatherers, if you came across carbohydrates, obviously weren't available in the way that they are to us now. So there you'd have come across a bush of blueberries or something, and you were supposed to gorge on them because you didn't know when you would come across them again. Yeah. So you have no off switch of carbohydrate, which is why people can eat a whole massive bowl of pasta, but you couldn't eat the same volume of chicken, could you? No. Because you'd automatically, your brain would be going, oh no, I've had enough, because you've had that. Yeah, you've had that hormone chemical signaling saying to your brain, I've had protein, I've had healthy fat. So every time you have a meal, you have to make sure you have that lovely balance in there. And also, obviously, this completely goes with what you guys say, but what I'd normally say to my clients is just reduce that intake of sugar and refined carbohydrates. You don't need those in your diet. You get enough energy from the other food that you're eating. And carbohydrates, obviously, as you guys know, go from anything from a plant food, so they go from broccoli all the way to a Krispy Kreme donut. So staying down the green carb end is really where we want to be. And if you have lots of different types of those lovely veggies, then that's going to nourish you and stop you wanting to crave those kind of sugary foods. Yeah. And then the other thing within blood sugar balance is obviously reducing your caffeine and alcohol intake. Both of those completely mess with your blood sugar levels. So if you're really looking for key blood sugar balance, then try and cut that coffee and black tea or whatever. And obviously reduce alcohol is just full of sugar. So
there's reduce those down. Nothing good about alcohol, is there? Apart from the fact that for a little while it makes you feel good and it makes you feel silly. And then gives you a hangover the next day.
And it gives you a massive appetite. No, it gives you a massive appetite the next day because your blood sugar has just gone through the floor.
Just going to say that's why, isn't it? Because you have all of that sugar, you send it up through the roof and you have that massive crash. And that's why the next day when you have that hangover, all you want to eat is carbs. And it's like, give you all the carbs when you have a hangover.
That's exactly what's happening.
And like to say, it's about those quick carbs, isn't it? Because we, as you know, encourage the green leafy end of the veggies because we explain to people they are carbohydrates. It's not we don't encourage zero carb. We encourage carbohydrates in this form.
Green carbs, not beige carbs, I like to say.
Yes, exactly, yeah. Orange ones for sweet potatoes, so kind of in the but you don't crave that. When you have a hangover the next day, you don't crave a sweet potato, you want pizza, don't you? And that's right. And
it's once again, it's because your brain's primary fuel is glucose and your body's primary thing is to make sure your brain stays alive. So it automatically, it's just wanting for the quickest fix it can to get glucose in to fuel your brain. So that's all that's happening. So but that's why you get that panic, that sort of that urge to do it. So
and plus you probably killed off a few brain cells with the alcohol as well.
Possibly. So that's tip 3 about blood sugar balance, planning, routine. Having those things will really help. Having those healthy things in place should really help. So basically following on for that is step 4 is basically setting yourself up for a good daily plan and for good sleep. So if you're overeating in the evening, it could be because you're not eating enough during the day. So making sure that you're eating 3 distinct meals, and making sure that they're balanced and you're following your plan, and that you haven't had a day where you've accidentally skipped loads of stuff because you've been too busy. So again, trying to space out your daily eating through the day. So for example, if you're eating breakfast at 8 o'clock, having lunch at 1, having dinner at 6, giving yourself that lovely overnight fast is really key, because by doing that, you kind of basically make sure that you're getting those nutrients throughout the day, and that can make sure that you don't feel hungry later in the evening. If you're finding that you're if you're eating a lot then, it's because you haven't spaced stuff out during the day. That can really mess with your digestion as well. So it's really key to kind of do that.
Yeah, and because again, like you said, when we sleep, that's when we're healing, that's when we're repairing ourselves. Ideally, you don't want necessarily your body working hard to digest the food that you've just eaten. 2 hours
Absolutely not.
No,
you really don't. You want to have a lovely overnight fast and a nice big gap before you go to bed with your eating, because staying up late, particularly during the hours that you should be sleeping, research shows really increases the odds of overeating that time. Because obviously prior to having the light bulb and TV and everything else, we obviously slept for about 10 hours a night. And these days, I think the average UK person gets like 6.9 hours, which is far fewer than you really should. And lack of sleep and short sleep duration have been linked to higher calorie intake and more snacking. And that's directly due to the fact that we have two hormones that control our appetite. We have leptin, which tells your body when you're full, and basically levels of that increase during your sleep. And we have ghrelin, which tells your brain that you're hungry, and that basically decreases during your sleep. So there's this lovely balance. But therefore, if you're not getting enough sleep, you're going to not have those imbalance. So consequently, you're going to have a much bigger appetite and much more hunger during the day, which can obviously lead to overconsumption. So it's super important to rest.
Yeah, presumably as well, when you're tired as well. I know this from experience after my hectic weekends. When you are tired, you need that. You feel like you need that more, that cognitive function. You do eat more because you feel like you need the energy, because you are like flaking away. You're like, oh God, I need something. I need a caffeine. I need something to back up to keep me going. When you're tired. So I think that's a really key thing, making sure you get enough quality sleep. I don't think
absolutely
say how important that is. Can stress how important.
It really is. It's one of the key things for appetite control. It's really, really important. I can't stress it enough, because particularly if you're not going to sleep, you might again have the willpower to make it through the day eating to your nice plan, and then by the evening that is going to be it. You're going to be snacking. So just trying to get yourself to have really good levels of sleep is super key. And again, as you said, for muscle repair, for your immune health, for all that kind of stuff. There's all sorts of stuff. Also, it's super important for your digestive health as well. So if anyone's got any issues with IBS, whatever, you need that time. I like to think, if you've got all your little bacteria in your gut, I like to think of that as being like a lawn. You don't want to walk on it too many times. You need to kind of let it rest and grow. So it needs that time overnight to kind of have a bit of rest and do what it needs to do. So that was point number 4. So good sleep and a balance. Number 5 is distract yourself. Mm-hmm. So if you're someone who is used to having those chocolate or that biscuits in the evening because you're bored, then you have to find something else that you enjoy doing instead. Just to keep your mind occupied. Research shows that finding a new hobby or planning evening activities can really prevent mindless late night snacking. I mean, they even did research on it, Sarah. So, but telling people what to do, this is where you need to find out what works for you. So I have one client who's taken up crocheting again. She loves it after years of doing it. She's kind of going, I'm going to go back to doing that now. So she's making all like those little granny squares. She's making herself something. So, but obviously, if you're working with someone else who's maybe a 26-year-old builder, they're not going to want to take up crochet. So it's really you never know. I shouldn't pigeonhole people. But so it's really important to think of something that you would do, that you like doing, that you can do instead, that's going to take away from that time. So I don't know, what would you think? What would you do, Sarah? What would work for you?
Oh, well, it's quite funny you say crocheting, actually, because one of my things for the first lockdown, and I know there are going to be a few people laughing at me here, was to learn how to crochet. I didn't. I've got a piece of crochet about that long. I think I lost my crochet hook down the decking where I threw it in frustration. We had to fish it. So I tend to read. I quite like reading. Or poor Gareth, unfortunately, I will just talk to Gareth. So.
Excellent. I like a bit of talking too.
But one of the things, like saying that, one of the things I did actually do when I gave up smoking, mostly smoked years ago,
Yeah.
Was exactly that, because I had to distract myself. And when I wanted this cigarette, I used to peel an orange. So I would peel the skin off, and I don't like the white bit. So I would then get the segments and I would peel every bit of white bit off of the orange segment, and then I'd eat it. It used to take me ages, but by the time I'd done that, give it 5 minutes, 10 minutes maybe, and that craving for the cigarette had gone, because I was so kind of engrossed in what I was doing. It completely distracted me. I'd eat the orange and I'd be like, oh, I hadn't thought about having a cigarette. So once the craving's gone, it's gone. So it works.
Yeah, and see, that's so clever. And I think that's exactly it. Just finding something that works for you and works for you within your where you're sitting or whatever. I think that's a brilliant idea. So I've got someone else who does Sudoku, but they find that kind of really helps.
Anything that occupies sort of your eyes, your hands, your mind, I think.
Yeah.
Probably going to be a good shout, isn't it? Because you're
absolutely, and not MasterChef or any cooking program. No. Save those and watch them earlier in the day. Don't watch those in the evening, because they will definitely, or Bake Off or any of those things.
I think I once watched Bake Off when I was first sort of going through losing my weight, and I think I watched Bake Off whilst we were doing one of our detox challenges. And I remember just sitting there thinking, God, I feel miserable. I want to stick my face in that cake.
Exactly, and that's the key. Don't punish yourself. Go and watch some kind of murder program or something instead. You know?
I do. I want to watch the world's scariest Christmas now or something.
Yeah, there you go.
Helps.
You're not going to get nice food in that, are you?
Definitely not. No.
So that's like tip number 5, and then tip number 6. Now this is going to sound, it's really an important tip, and it's often one that people don't take seriously, but it's believe you can. So basically, if you believe you can change your habits, routines, you will.
Yeah.
So I know that sounds really oversimplified, but that was basically the conclusion of a recent study, again, go back to my science studies, that had data on the diet, exercise and personality type of over 7,000 people. And they basically found that those that have the ability to change their lives through their own actions tended to, who believed that they could change their lives, tended to eat more healthily, exercise more, and avoid binge drinking. So it's really interesting. So when I have a client say things, I'll never be able to change, I'm never going to be able to do that, I then ask them to, I've got no willpower, I can't do it, other people could do it, I've never been able to do it. I ask them to think about something that they have changed or something that they have achieved, that they felt doubt about but ultimately accomplished, because I think that then just identifying that and reminding yourself of your past successes can really help you feel more confident in your ability to do something about it now. And I think, like, particularly people at Club 100, you're dedicating, you've paid for this service, you're coming along. If you're able to make that change and put your exercise and food in, then there's no reason you need to say to yourself, I can stop snacking. I can do it. Because it's really interesting. We've got this, again, a bit more science for you, Sarah. It's called the reticular activating system, the RAS, and it works between our conscious and our unconscious mind as a little kind of go between. So, for example, I'll show you how it works. Have you ever bought a new car and then you see that car everywhere? Like you're like, there's no more of that car around, but your body, your mind is just about has identified it and is able to see it, because we're only allowed to consciously see a certain number of things at a time. And so when your body starts to focus on something, then you start to be aware of that. So if you start to focus on things that are positive, you start to notice more positive things. So if you start to say to yourself, I'm able to do this, then your unconscious mind goes, oh, okay then, and kind of cracks on. So it's really interesting. That's kind of the science behind how that positive thinking works.
Yeah, it does make, again, perfect sense, because the number of times we then people say that as soon as they think, right, that's it, I'm not going to eat chocolate, all they want to eat is chocolate, and everywhere they go there's chocolate, and it's just in an abundance. Whereas before, like you say, it probably was still there the same amount, they just didn't pay much attention, and it's because it's what you're paying attention to, isn't it?
It is, because your brain is a little bit like a Google search engine. If you put in there, do not search for pink elephants, what will come up?
Pink elephants.
Yeah, you can't, it's exactly the same. So if we say, do not think about chocolate, you're just thinking about chocolate, so you need to switch it to the positive. Yeah, you have to think about the healthy things that you're doing, that are positive things that you're doing, the fact that you're able to do it, and that will be more what your brain latches onto, and then your unconscious mind is constantly in the background kind of working away and stuff. So remind yourself of your past successes. Reach out if you need support, reach out for it. Get your partner to help you, get your kids to help you, chat to the people within the group here, because I'm sure you've got a fabulous community, haven't you?
Yeah, we have.
Yeah, share any of those tips and things that you need, because you don't want to fall back into those old unhealthy routines again. If you're doing all this other brilliant work, then it's so important to it just seems silly to let it fall at the last hurdle, doesn't it?
Exactly, and it is so true. It is what we hear. I can't do it, I can't change it, I just can't help myself, I don't know what to do, I can't. And that's what we hear quite a lot with that. And like you say, it is about changing your internal dialect, isn't it? It's what you're telling yourself.
Yeah,
telling yourself straight away that you can't do something, then you're, like I say, you're not going to be able to do it. Whereas if you start to say, do you know what, I can do it, it just changes everything, doesn't it? It changes your whole outlook, your motivation levels go up as well, I think, don't they?
Yeah, and then your little RAS system that's fetching stuff is going to be fetching positive things to pop into your conscious mind. So it really, really works. I know lots of people think it's a bit woo-woo, but I can assure you it's based on lots of neuroscience. It absolutely is. It's fantastic. It really does work.
Everyone knows I'm not a woo-woo person. but it is like when you say, if you have a bad morning, so if you get up and I don't know, just for example, like I run out of coffee this morning, so for God's sake, run out of coffee. And then before you know it, it's not just you run out of coffee, this happens, that happens, and it has that knock-on effect, doesn't it? So like I say, if you then switch it to a positive thing, like, I'll run out of coffee, but I'll have green tea, it might not be the same, but it might not be as bad.
Absolutely, that is exactly the way. That is exactly it. So you've hit the nail on the head. It's that how you are in charge of how you feel about something. The situation isn't going to change, but you can change how you deal with it, and I think that's so key.
Got that negative head on, you will see the negative in things rather than the positive. 100%.
Yeah, absolutely. So those are my 6 tips to stop late night snacking.
Brilliant, thank you.
Excellent.
I have got a few questions that I had before. We've got quite a few people watching there. So we've got Sue and Ben. Hello. So I'm doing this as well. Darryl was with us and Emma was with us as well. So what would you suggest is a good sort of snack? So if we go back to that first tip where you actually have asked yourself, am I hungry, or is it just a habit or not? And you think, yes, I am hungry. What is a good sort of snack that you could suggest rather than having sweets, chocolate, biscuits?
Well, my kind of go-to generally is nuts, because I think they're really good. Just a small handful is enough, but they're a really good balance of protein and fats. Take a bit of chewing. I'm going to quickly pop in here, not like dry roasted ones or any with loads of flavors. I'm talking raw nuts here. But a handful of nuts are excellent, and they really make you feel full, and they're great. Or a boiled egg, or some crunchy veggies. It depends on, but if you are genuinely hungry, then maybe like a small portion of your dinner. Like that's not a necessarily bad thing. If you're hungry, go back to that, but always have it balanced. So I tend to go for nuts personally. I tend to make my own mix up of different ones that I like. So kind of pecan, almond, walnuts, and then you get a good balance, and then you don't know what you're eating in there. It's quite nice. Yeah, the odd macadamia nuts are quite delicious.
Yeah, they're nice, expensive though, aren't they, macadamias? That's because they're delicious. And fruit is one of my go-tos. Now, I quite like frozen cherries, so I will have some of them sometimes in the evening. Not the dried ones, because the dried, there's a difference, isn't there? The dried fruit, which people think is a good sort of healthy snack to have, is actually full of sugar, and it's going to bump you up. It's had
the fibre. Yeah, it has the fibre taken out. So basically, if you imagine, like with dried apricots, if you were given a fresh apricot, you could eat 1, maybe 2, couldn't you? And then that would be enough. Whereas if you think of dried apricots, people can easily eat like 5 or 6 of them, and you think, oh my goodness, and that's about that kind of concentrated dried dried sugar in there, because it had all the fibre and everything else, the bulk of it taken out, you can eat much faster. So I would definitely go for fresh fruit, but I would always pair it with some protein. So if you're going to have, so if you're going to have, you know, a bit of, going to have some of your cherries, then I'd have a couple of almonds with it too. In fact, that would make a nice kind of bakewell flavour, wouldn't it?
Yeah, quite like the sound of that.
Yeah, because sugar is excellent. Fruit is excellent. I'm not going to say not to have it, but it's still a higher sugar food. So by having a little bit of protein alongside it, that just keeps your blood sugar nice and balanced. So absolutely going for the fruit. And if you're looking for lower sugar fruit options as well, my rule of thumb is if it's grown in the UK, then it tends to be lower sugar. So looking at, you know, the kind of things like the berries, cherries, strawberries, you know, all of that kind of stuff, they're much more the lower sugar, whereas the closer you get to the equator tends to be the higher the sugar content of the fruits.
Pineapples, mangoes, all them,
yeah,
they're very sweet as well, aren't they? Frozen cherries, and I go for cherries because they got something in them that's meant to help you sleep.
Yes, they have, absolutely. They're a really good source. Melatonin,
that's it, melatonin.
Yeah, no, but you're right though. So melatonin is there, especially the tart cherries. You can get kind of tart cherries specifically like from health food shops and stuff, and that is a source of melatonin. So melatonin is your go to sleep hormone, which makes you feel nice and sleepy. So cherries are a good one. But basically, if you go further back, tryptophan is the amino acid that you want that helps you sleep. Because tryptophan is a precursor to serotonin, which is our feel-good hormone in our minds, and that is the precursor to melatonin. So there's tryptophan, serotonin, melatonin. So tryptophan-rich foods are things like eggs, turkey, chicken. Those are all really great sources of tryptophan. So having those will help you along the line as well. So yeah, maybe like a little bit of chicken or something before bed. Not your usual go-to snack.
Certainly not mixed chicken and cherries together before, but I would certainly try the cherries and the almonds together.
The cherries and the almonds.
Yeah, because I think that sounds really, really nice. And what you just said there as well about the chicken and how the amino acids sort of like bump along to ultimately ending that great night's sleep. It just shows the importance, I think, of having a balanced diet throughout the day. How it's
absolutely,
you're not just eating for that one meal, you're eating for overall health and wellness.
Absolutely, because there are 21 different amino acids, some of which are essential, which means our bodies can't make them. We have to get them from our diet. So it's super important that you get a wide range of different good quality protein foods across the course of the day to make sure you get all of those amino acids. Because not only do they make those brain signaling chemicals that we were just talking about, they obviously help build our muscles and our bodies, but they're also used for all sorts of other things. So our enzymes in our bodies, our antibodies are made of protein. I mean, gosh, they're the building blocks of basically everything. So making sure we have that nice range. Obviously, things like meat and fish and eggs are probably the best source because it's like for like, isn't it? But there are
alternatives, aren't there?
Yeah, there are. If you're living on a plant-based diet, then there are different ways of going for it. But yeah, so having all of that, having that in, and the same goes with healthy fats as well. It's super important to get a good balance of those, particularly for things like your omega-3 fats, which I'm sure you guys cover as well. So important because oily fish. So things like salmon, tuna, mackerel, sardines. Government guidelines recommend that we don't have more than 2 or 3 portions of those a week because their mercury levels in the sea are quite high, and they tend to be, they're not entirely sure how much mercury and stuff you're going to be getting if you eat more than that. But in fact, if the rule of thumb again for that is that the smaller the fish is, the less likely it is to be contaminated. So if you're going down the sardine end, it probably has less mercury in it than the kind of bigger fish like the tunas and so on.
I'm of the fear. I'm not a massive fish fan, and of the oily fish, it's the tuna and the salmon that I like. But fresh tuna, I don't like tuna in a tin. But the fresh tuna, fresh salmon, which right up that end, aren't they?
But that's
but I don't eat them that often. Like I said, I think like once a week to sort of get once, twice a week, maybe.
Yeah.
And the other question I had, it was about caffeine. So caffeine. can that have sort of an impact on you wanting to snack later on during the day? And also caffeine around sort of your just your general sort of consumption anyway, and around what it does to your gut.
Yeah, absolutely. So caffeine's a really interesting one because basically it's down to your genetics, how well you process it.
Right.
Because basically we clear all toxins through our liver, and it goes through 2 different pathways. Some people process it really quickly, other people pass it really slowly. So you'll find with coffee, some people can drink like 8 espressos and they're absolutely fine, and yet someone else has half a cup of tea and they're jittery. So that is down to your genes. Right. So you have to gauge for yourself how much or how little, caffeine affects you. But it is going to affect your sleep. There's no doubt about it. It basically sits on, you have these little receptors for adenosine, which basically build up course of the day, which is what makes you tired. What caffeine does is it sits in the place on those receptors to stop that happening. So it basically stops you from going to sleep, which is not a problem in the morning, but obviously through the course of the day, it's going to be an issue for you. So again, I would always recommend to clients if they want to drink, because I think coffee's, there are good things about coffee. It's full of polyphenols, lovely health-giving chemicals, but equally you want to have it if you have it earlier in the day, because you don't want it affecting your sleep for all of those lovely reasons that we discussed earlier about how important your sleep is. Yeah. The other thing is I generally recommend to clients not to have caffeine on an empty stomach, because it can raise your blood, it can raise your cortisol levels, which are your stress hormones. And which is partly what perks you up and makes you wake, because your cortisol is your wake me up hormone. But often that can happen. But the problem with that is when you raise cortisol levels, one of the things your body does, because you think you're in fight or flight mode, you think you're panicking, is your body produces its own sugar to fuel you to run away from that tiger. You don't want to be creating your own sugar in your body if you're trying to lose weight and balance your blood sugar, do you? So so not having too much caffeine on an empty stomach would stop that happening. So
that's interesting, because I always have my coffee first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. So I think it depends on you. If it's not going to if it doesn't make you feel too bad, it's a really a personal thing. But I'm quite happy.
But it can affect your blood sugar balance, and again, how you process it depends. But on the plus side, coffee, especially fresh coffee, it's full of fiber, and I know, which is odd, but it is full of fiber, and it also has these great polyphenols, these fantastic kind of plant chemicals, which can have a positive effect on our body. So I'm not anti-coffee at all. It just has its place, and I think it depends on the individual how you feel when you drink it.
Presumably the quality as well.
Oh, absolutely. Oh my goodness, yeah. Because coffee or coffee beans can be one of the most highly sprayed plants. So if you can afford to, I think it'd be better to go down the organic route and not have it as often than having the non-organic and having it a lot, if that makes sense. Yeah, because it's
good quality stuff.
Yeah. I think anything you put in your body, if you can afford it, should be the best quality that you can afford. It's the most important thing.
Yeah, and you kind of have to decide like where your negotiables are, don't you? Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think but going down the kind of cooking the food yourself from scratch, if you can, is always the best way, even if you're not able to afford kind of expensive organic ingredients, because then at least you know what's going into what it is that you're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Lovely. Yeah. Okay. Well, I haven't got any more questions at the moment. But obviously what we will say to people is that this has gone into the Facebook group, so they can ask questions afterwards, and if you're happy for me to, I can always send them to you afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
Dog's coming in the room now.
Oh, she is. Hello.
Every time. Just see a little head sticking up.
Oh, she's so cute.
But can you tell people where they can find you, Alex, if they want to?
Yeah.
Because do you do like a consultation, if I remember rightly?
I do. I give free 30-minute consultations so people can come and chat to me about any health concerns that they have. And what we can do is talk about what they've tried, what kind of things have worked for them, what haven't, and I can give them some tips to take them, they can go away with to help them feeling better, and obviously give them an opportunity to know how I work on a one-to-one basis. So if you'd like to get in touch with me, you can book that via my website, which is alexallennutrition.co.uk, or I'm on Instagram as Alex Allan Nutrition, and on Facebook as Alex Allan Nutrition as well. So really easy.
Yeah, and then what I'll probably do is I'll probably drop the link to your website into the comments on the Facebook group. So then if people do want to get in touch with Alex and have a look on her website and see a bit more about what she does, they can do. And then if you want to book in for that free consultation, that free chat, then you can do as well, and see what Alex can help you with.
Excellent. Thank you so much for having me today, Sarah. It's lovely. So much for
coming in. I've really enjoyed having a chat. It's been very, very interesting. And I love a bit of science. So thank you.
I know. That's good.
I love a bit of science. Not so good. I love a bit of science. So thank you very, very much. And we'll speak to you soon then, Alex.
Yeah, take care. Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Bye. Take care. Bye.
Bye.